All right, good morning. I had something that I was going to reiterate on I guess I've got a series going on here about um, loving the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength being the first commandment. But um, I saw something, I started watching a video, and it was um, basically about the culture war and the things going on. And um, a montage of the past couple of years. And basically, all of the movies, all of the Pride Month situation, and all of these different things that are seem to be encroaching on the culture. And, the video was attempting to sort of place blame and just find out who do we blame. And um, they brought up, the conservative movement just kind of doing nothing and only pretending to conserve and this and that. And it was just basically like edited, cut up things from different other sources. And but I was listening to it, and um, I was mostly in agreement, but not really, because even they, it's just really funny because there's always been like this. There's been like the conservative group of people, and then there's these, the liberals, and then there's these people in the middle who are like, just, I don't want to, like, they don't want to. It's not a cowardly middle, it's just more like a cautious middle. Like, I don't want to, neither one of you parties is doing a great job, and the party system isn't what we need. We need to just, it's always just trying to find some innovative solution. And I don't know, for the first time, I was just like, yeah, you guys are just as lost as everyone else. Like, just because you see what's going on um, doesn't make you more, because you're just, all you can do is really talk about it. And even if what you're talking about is how everyone is complacent and no one is doing anything, and they're saying they want to do this and that, and it's like, it's good to know all of those things, but if you don't know the solution, then you're just as lost as everyone else. And they refuse to look at Jesus as the solution, which understandably they would. No one looks at Jesus as the solution. No one looks at Christ as the solution. Because they're still earth based, they don't realize that this is a cosmic war being engaged. And so they think that's a little much, because everything that's happening is happening on earth. So why make it into this whole, why make it theological? Why make it, they don't understand. They don't understand what theology is for, actually, for realsies. And they don't understand why the war is happening at all. To them, it looks like money and greed, and that's where it ends. And just, people just are just weird, and they want to take over the world for some reason, and it's just weird. And um, they just don't see it. They also don't see that, Christianity is the world toppler. It just doesn't, like, how, where. And it's like sad that you can't really explain it to anybody. You can't. They just don't see it, and they're just not going to. Um, and maybe that's part of the plan. It's like God says, I'm going to do this the way I'm doing it. I'm calling those who love me, and that's how it's going to, that's who's going to be doing this. It doesn't matter that you're smart and insightful, and you can see this and that, and this and that, and it doesn't matter. Like, if at the end of the day you're not going to pick Jesus, it doesn't matter. And part of it is, I'm really just firmly in a, I think that the entire current body of Christ, as of right now, those who are really like watching for him, we are really, I I think it's not just me, we're getting this collective detachment, and we're preparing ourselves to not be here anymore. Um, it's really quite amazing. I really did just think it was me, and something was, I was just giving in to some weird energy, that I was going to kick myself later for having to sort of come back to reality if I needed to. But it's looking like everyone is feeling that. And so I'm watching this, and they are trying to fix this world that is burning, that they feel like they're going to have to, it's going to be one heck of a rebuilding process if they don't get a hold of it now. And I'm just like, yeah, no, you're not going to, because you won't acknowledge that Jesus is here to save. Because and that just seems ridiculous. I mean, I've been here long enough. I know how that sounds, but I'm tired of having to feel ridiculous when it's true and completely correct. Because people take for granted how, the way that Christianity came on the scene. And I don't know, the history around it is always, it's always going to, the devil's not going to give you the real details of stuff. But the reality is, when you accept Christ and Jesus becomes Lord of your life, and the Holy Spirit comes into your heart, you're going to lose your, I mean, genuinely, I'm talking about genuine move of God. I'm not talking about, this sort of safe, because what people need right now is a revival, but revival is not going to happen for a while. And I think that's just because, I mean, as we see right now, people see what's going on, they see the signs, they see the dumpster fire that it is. They're still not looking up. They're still not going to God and going, we are out of ideas. So there's not going to be any revival until that happens. And revival, it just having other Christians talk to each other about revival is just not what's going to get it done. So it's going to get super, super, super crazy before people start going, okay, this is beyond us. This is beyond our technology. This is beyond our education. This is beyond our, our will and all of that. And then they're going to finally get back to what I'm saying to you right now. But basically, when that really happens, when it for real happens, you just so happen to lose all connection to everything that keeps this beast system alive. So, what's currently keeping them alive? What's keeping Disney from producing nonsense? What's keeping corporations in business and able to bribe politicians? What's keeping big pharma in line? You have to be sick. Yeah, you have to need entertainment. You have to need things to make you happy, because you're not happy otherwise. Okay, so the Holy Spirit comes in. Suddenly, you and God are reconnected. You're praising God. You're having then other people around you, they're praising God. You love each other. Okay, so you don't need to go out to eat. You don't need to go to movies. You don't need to go to concerts. You don't need to have drugs anymore. You don't need to drink anymore. You don't need, like, the things that we make fun of that are just plain as day in your face, the things that are literally fodder for people to make fun of. Christians not doing anything, they're just goody two shoes people who don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. Wow, it's all the tentacles in this world that keep you connected to it. Isn't that funny? But you just make fun of everybody. They're just sticks in the mud, blah blah blah. You've been doing it for years. You've been doing it for generations. You've been doing it for decades. And there was a time when it was okay to not be so extreme and just be in the middle, and not, you could get by, you could still have a life. And that window is closing. That's just what it is. All those philosophies you had were never correct. They just were. Life was held in place enough by the people of God, by and large, or evil was kept at bay enough to where you could keep your bad mouthing of the things of God, and nothing would happen to you, or nothing immediately would go bad, or you could just be wrong and still walk around and live your life and contradict yourself. And now it's just that time that was grace. You thought it was the people of God doing too much. No, those were the people that were, on the wall that whole entire time, and uh, keeping, the dark things at bay. And eventually they got tired of their job too, because y'all was wearing them down and telling them that there was no point in them doing what they were doing. And finally they were like, you know what, you're right. And that's when the whole thing started. I mean, it was always moving towards this direction, but there's certain things that happen in the last days that cause that to be able to happen at a super rapid pace, namely technology. And the things that technology were allowed to bring, the media and stuff, the movies and the TV. I mean, the movies and the TV did such an insane job on their own. And then the next generation of that, which is the internet and now this AI, is just, it's like a layered exponential thing that's happening. So, anyways, so I was just thinking about that. I was like, yeah, it just so happens that everything that God sort of detaches you from is everything that gives this succubus life on this planet. But people love the succubus and they like it. They just want it. They're just like, can we have it a little bit? And because they love the succubus so much and what it gives them, because it's like, let's create a money system and then let's let y'all compete against each other, or let some of y'all get rich and some of y'all stay poor, and let y'all like run around like rats. And then God says, the love of money is the root of all evil, and give your possessions, all your possessions to the poor, and this and that. And like, okay, fine, you want to make fun of the huge mega churches and this and that, but the point is that wasn't just, Jesus wasn't saying that just for the Christians, that was for everybody. So anyways, because people love the succubus even just a little bit, they just didn't want to give it up. They just had a little succubus routine. It's like, I just want I want my Netflix and my Starbucks, and I want to still go out to clubs, and I can't give up my this and that. I'm not a bad person. Okay, well, everyone's collective succubus need is what's causing y'all to, because you won't give up the little that you got. Now you're a slave to it when you could be free of it, because it's our participation that powers it. You can't have a drug kingpin if no one's taking drugs. So anyway, and that's what would happen if the Christian message permeated the entire earth. The other kingdom would die. Even now, with this other kingdom having the heyday that it's having right now, Christianity maintains it's still a nuisance to it, which is it's pretty amazing, because it really just shouldn't have a chance. But yeah, if Christianity took hold everywhere, if the earth was filled with the glory of God, the other kingdom would die. Like, it's directly in parallel. Like, the other one will not survive, because it runs off of all of the vices, all of the things that God says is bad and that you should not do. So, if everybody loved God and was obedient to God, then those things would die off. and those things couldn't exist. It couldn't be if there couldn't be secret societies, if everyone is confessing their sins to another and saying things and doing everything openly, if everyone's sharing their possessions even among each other or whatever, then there's not going to be, I don't know, whatever else. Just name whatever it is. If we're cracking down on false doctrines and all this stuff, there's not going to be other cults and other things that are going to try and take your this and that. It's like everything is covered. Everything is covered just by living out what the Bible says to do. And that was another funny thing in the video because it was like they were like, yeah, that a couple of years ago I would have told you like we don't need gatekeepers. It's like, yeah, we absolutely need gatekeepers. Like, well, I'm gatekeeper. No, you can't come in. No, you have to stay out. And it's funny. It's like, oh, so the Christians were right, like from the beginning. Like whenever we started, because they were like the tolerance thing is not working out. Tolerance is not working out. We don't need tolerance. It's like, wow, I remember in the '90s. I remember being in 6th grade and the tolerance conversation was big. Like I just remember that specifically. And they had no intention of ever like, well, let's bring up, well, what about tolerance as a it was never a suggestion. They were going to do it. And, they've made us look bad in the process. Like we couldn't have a conversation. You can't entertain an idea. It's just hilarious. But I really am tired of the rigmarole and just this dog and pony show. It's so stupid. But anyways, that's upsetting. That's not even what I was going to come talk to y'all about. But it's already 16 minutes in. But anyways, and I haven't gotten rid of my other videos, so I hope this doesn't cut off. But yeah, I was still thinking about the love of God, and just the first commandment, basically. And again, just getting more and more, just rewiring my brain to really see this everywhere. And I tried to look up in the Bible, like references to, you must love the Lord your God. I didn't really quite know what I was looking for. I was just looking for some, contextual evidence of this mandate to love God. And, I just saw it in the standard places, where it says literally to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I didn't see it over and over and over and over. But for some reason, I got the idea to look up the word reward because I was thinking of that verse where it says, where God says, I am your exceedingly great reward or something like that. And so I was like, well, let me look up the word reward, even though that was like the only place that I could think of that it would be at. And I got some really interesting stuff. So I did get that. It's in Genesis, where God is talking to Abraham. And he says, don't be afraid, Abraham. He goes, it's Abram before it's Abraham. Don't be afraid, Abram. I'm your shield, your very great reward. And then you don't really see the reward motif until the New Testament, or a little bit in Psalms, a little bit in Proverbs. Particularly in Proverbs, well, a lot of the things in Psalms is about how God rewards, the righteous, and He rewards people according to what they've done and all of that stuff. But in particular, the one in Proverbs that caught my eye was the one that is talking about the same thing that Jesus talked about, which is about loving your enemies. And it was like in Proverbs, it says, feed your enemy when he's hungry, and when he's thirsty, give him water, or whatever. And then it says, in doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. which I've heard before. And I just thought it was interesting because there's nothing in there about um, what we the way that we teach love your enemy, which is like just do it because that's the right thing to do. And Jesus does give a reason. The reason that he gives is because the Lord does this basically. He sends rain on the just and the unjust. And he says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. But it also does say that he will reward you for doing that. And because what reward would you get for loving those who love you? I mean, that's everyone does that. And that day, that's what they did. And so, but it was just interesting. It just stuck out to me where it was like, um, you'll heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Meaning, you're now you're clearing your own self of wrongdoing by doing good for your enemy. So that keeps, it's like if you're a judge in a courtroom and you've got two people and this person vandalized the other person's thing. It's an open and shut case when someone vandalizes your stuff and you don't do any retaliation, you just file the paperwork, do everything you're supposed to do, then that makes it easier on the judge. But when he vandalizes you and then you go into your yard and you cut their dog's hair or whatever, now it's becoming a thing. And you got to like try and mete out justice from these two knuckleheads. So that's the way I see it anyway. So it's like when you do that for your enemy, now you completely absolve yourself from wrongdoing, and then on top of it, because you're doing something good for him, it's not just simply a lack of retaliation. It's you're doing something good for them. Now it's like, well, what reason does he have to be your enemy? Now you're heaping burning coals on their head. And it's not so much like, let me do this so that my enemy can get, so that my enemy, it's not a kill him with kindness type of thing. It sort of is, but it's like, you do that in your heart. It's just like, you do your part and then God does his part, which is now his judgment is completely focused on that person and going, okay, what's your beef? Like, they're doing something nice for you. They're loving you. So what are you doing? And now you're causing that person to heap judgment. And on top of that, the Lord is rewarding you for your good behavior. So it's intricate. There's a lot going on in that people don't really, they just, I can't imagine that loving your enemies is going to have some super great appeal just in and of itself, because you should just do it because it's a good thing to do. Because the Bible says to do it. Because the Bible's not even saying it like that. The Bible is breaking down what's going on. But you've narrowed it down to like, it'll make you look super, super righteous. You'll be like Jesus. You'll look like Jesus. It's like, just make sure you're doing it for the right reason. So anyways, because it's hard too. So don't just go in thinking, oh, I'm going to just love my enemy. Like it's if you're not prepared for how difficult that is, then you might get bitter, is what I'm saying. So understand what it's telling you so you can know what to expect. So anyways, that kind of was like a kind of off, but not really. So when we get to Matthew in particular, Matthew's like big on the rewards. I don't know if it's just the audience or what. But Matthew remembers all the times that Jesus talked about rewards. And the Proverbs that I was talking about, he says, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And then it also says, don't practice your righteousness in front of others. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father. The hypocrites in synagogues give to the needy and announce it with trumpets. They've received their reward in full, stuff like that. And then it says, and this is all, I think this is all like either, it's not the Beatitudes, maybe it's Sermon on the Mount, I don't know, but it's the same reward conversation back and forth. And then, you'll receive a prophet's reward when you welcome a prophet, or a righteous person's reward when you welcome another righteous person. And then he talks about getting persecution. And he says, rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. For that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. So when you get persecuted and you get talked about and you get all these things that happen to you because of God, he's saying you better leap for joy, because you got a great reward coming. Like, I think what I was getting from all of this reward talk, aside from the fact that God is our reward, we've got God being our reward, and then we've got, it's like you can't get any of these rewards if you don't love God first. I mean, the first reward is God. The first reward that's talked about is in Genesis to Abraham, and the reward itself is God. And then, you're loving your enemies, and you're doing things for God that's causing other people to be so upset with you that they talk about you and persecute you. Like, your reward is directly tied to your love for God. Or your enthusiasm. I think those all go under the same umbrella. Your affection, your enthusiasm, your zeal, your excitement, your energy towards God. And it really has, like, faith is there. Obviously, you have to have faith to even go through this process, but like, to put all the emphasis on faith is a bad idea, in my opinion, because it's like, I don't know, they kind of go hand in hand, and love is the thing that you need to have evidence for. Like you could, I see a lot of people believing and still just kind of living in an uncertain future, because they think that it's all about God's requirement for them to believe something, because the finished work of the cross, and it's not about works, and you need to believe what Jesus did. And you're going, yeah, no, that's totally fine. I can, yeah, I can see it. I get it. But why am I still like why am I still feeling uncertain? It's like, oh, well, God will, God's not gonna, leave you, forsake you once you've accepted him. He's always gonna, and all of this stuff. It's like, okay, well, but how do you feel about that? Do you like him now? What is your, it's so simple and obvious, but it's like, I don't know. It gets, like I was saying before, it gets overlooked in the scriptures, because that wasn't really what they were, that part they weren't really wrestling with back then. I mean, as far as, not saying, oh, they knew how to love God, but they knew, like the appearance of loving God was important. And so everything that is emphasized is about going beyond the appearance, because this is the fruit of actually having love for God. And so, but we read that and we see that, oh, we have to have fruit. It's like you're still missing the point that they were missing, which is genuinely loving God. So I don't know. I don't want to go too much longer, but I just want to really quick like tell you like some stuff that I was thinking about. So I watched a couple of like near death experiences the other day that I really actually enjoyed. I haven't watched them in a while because I was just like, I'm really just focused on rapture stuff right now. And it's like, I don't really want to watch some NDE where they see like the light being and it's not really like I just didn't want to have to like wrestle with someone's weird NDE experience. And then the only reason why I like them is because if I feel like it's going to tell me something about God that I didn't know before, that's why that's all I'm watching it for. Okay. So, because I do have the sense when I watch a lot of these that they are encountering the same God of the Bible, but they interpret it a lot of times as a non-religious moment, which is strange. But I think it's only strange because the religion has been around so long, it has sort of its own connotation. So, for example, like I was telling my mom the other day, I was like, okay, if God came to you, like a lot of the ways that these people, first of all, they nearly die, which is really a new phenomenon to nearly die and then be brought back by machines, by this and that. Like that's a new phenomenon, right? And it's pretty prevalent. I mean, to the point where these people have organizations and they have conventions and all of this stuff. There's a lot of them. So you have an experience. You meet the big nebulous light or whatever, or he says, you refer to me as God or whatever. He's the big enchilada cheese. You're just like, oh my gosh, your entire like you're having a moment, right? What are you going to do in this modern day and age about that? I was going to say, oh, you're going to just tell people. You're going to get on YouTube and you're going to, tell that information. And really, though, you're not even going to do that because the culture of the day is to be skeptical and to really discount these experiences. So, what a lot of people are doing is keeping it to themselves for about 10 or 15 years, or saying that didn't really actually happen to you, you're whatever, or they suppress it or whatever, and then it comes back at a random time. Or they find other like minded people, they share it among themselves. That's what's happening now. What would happen if that happened to you? What would you do if 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, whatever time you think Bible times were, if you met the God of the universe, what are you going to do? Oh, maybe you're going to build a monument. Maybe you're going to say, God met me at this place, and you're going to give it a name. And you're going to like build stones. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. But because that's in a Bible now, and because there's this whole thing wrapped around that phenomenon, it's that's fairy tale now. And like even just the way that God talks to those people then as opposed to now, it's like Jesus is not going to give you a sheep and goats parable now because you would have no idea what that means. He gave them a sheep and goats parable because that was right. That would have been, the point was he was explaining something to them in a way that they would understand. They gave fishermen fish parables and they gave shepherds shepherd parables. He would give you another type of parable. I was thinking the other day, like about the word download, and just the concept of the download has really just, I mean, I don't think there's one single word that has helped the Christian in like all of Christianity is man inventing a machine where something gets downloaded, because that word so added like describes what happens to you when God gives you, like, They can't say that God gave him a download. Jeremiah can't say I got a download. He's got to say that I got a vision of this or that. And sometimes things appear as visions, but so often it is literally a download where you're getting information from, and it's like coming in batches to you, like stuff like that. So you have to read the Bible, but you have to have some insight about. You got to be, I don't know, like I don't think just because I have a degree, that's just a qualifying element. But it's like you got to read the thing. You got to read the thing, and you got to like analyze. Like I don't know. So anyway, so I was thinking about that, and there was a couple other things about this NDE that I really enjoyed, but like just kind of like trying to stay on topic here. So there's a lady that I watched, and she met God, who didn't appear to her as a human in human form. It was just like she was like out in space talking to, but it was a person. And a lot of people they can't ascribe gender to the person, which again have no problem with. So, um, she says, well, I don't know. She was marveling in her brain about how he knew something. He knew something about her, knew her name or something. And he says, I know the grains of sand on a beach in New Zealand. And she was like, what? Like, she just thought that was like, wow, like, which is the same thing, like, that I think of when God just says something. You're like, that's what you chose to say. It's like really, it's very singular. It's not something you're going to find in other like religions, because it's always like God is the all knowing. He doesn't like go to the bathroom or anything. He doesn't have a weird thought. He is always like like in a smarter in this comfortable place that you can always count on, like being able to look up to, and not quite. It's like very human to me. Us like making something grand that we can look at and be awed by all the time, like never not or whatever. It's kind of like when you first meet a person, like you got a crush on a person. You don't ever really want to see that person do anything like goofy or anything. You just want to like have that person be on that pedestal or whatever. It's like that's the way that we make God sometimes. But God will totally like, he just is not. It's just kind of like he stays himself but also surprises you with how he can just be regular, or just like you're just like, what? So I recognize that immediately. It's like, that's God. And the fact that the sand on the seashore thing, that's in the Bible. So I just thought that was funny. But she was saying like he said that, and then like she was like, what? And then she literally went to this beach. She looked at the sand. She was taken to it. She felt the sand, and she instantly also knew the number of grains of sand. Then he says, I know the numbers of hair on the hairs on your head, which she didn't really like mention that was in the Bible or anything, but it's famously in the Bible. And so he's doing, to me, it was like, that's recognizably God, the same God to me. And I can see that because like I was just describing his personality, and then the way that he is, like he's like I just know him. Okay, that all comes from having a love, some might say a relationship, which is another thing. Like this is why you have to really get back to the first commandment, because having this relationship based on faith, where it's like it's just purely like you're just making a chair for God and he sits over there and you talk to him. Like I get where we're going with it, and that's great. But it's like you need to be doing that because you want to engage with God, because you love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, which is not something you can do to somebody who you don't even believe in. So I would work on the love part first because the belief will come, like obviously. So, anyways, so and then there was something else about that encounter that, but just that, it's like that to me just speaks of a God, the same God doing something in a modern way. Because somebody like that would say that and say there's nothing religious about that, and that's not true. It's the exact same thing. Jake when Jacob is in the wilderness and he sees a ladder from going from heaven to earth and angels on it, like that's not any less. And also, like, God is going to show them something. He's going to show us something. You know, like it's all the same. Like you don't like, or just don't discount it because it doesn't look like these stuffy old texts. Maybe it does. Like if you're trying to look for the through line, which is God, you'll see it. And another thing that I just thought was interesting, like not hers, but there was a second one that I watched, and it was about a guy. It was a black guy, and it was really interesting too because he just talked about how much he got out of this experience. Because before this experience, he was this really like angry militant guy, and he all of the upheaval that had been happening in the last years, the George Floyd riots and all of this stuff. He just had a lot of anger towards white people, and and his family was sort of like embroiled in it and stuff. And so he had a heart attack, and he was pretty young. And his explanation was that basically the anger just was like pickling his body, and I don't know if he said he had a heart attack. It was something like that, where he just was he started to feel the pains in his body, and he was trying to like make it through the day. And, when he got to the hospital, he just kind of collapsed. And he was out of his body. He had the whole out of body experience, feeling more alive than he's ever felt, and felt the peace and all this and that. But he was in the hospital still, and he was looking around. He could see everything that was happening. But he said that he looked up. He saw his own body. He didn't really recognize that was him because he was him. They always had that same experience, and so he wasn't really connected with that. But then he looked up and he could see, like, there was no ceiling. He could see space, and like once he looked up and saw space, he was in the space. So he like went up, and he said that he saw, like, the hospital was directly below him, but it was like diagonally down, or like diagonally up. He could see the light, which everyone recognizes as the light. And then diagonally the other way, he could see what he said was the void, which was probably hell. But what was interesting about it is that he literally said, like, he saw the light, and it was like, ugh, like he was like not super interested in that. Like, I don't know, he didn't really like expound on it. It didn't seem like he was like he didn't not like it. It was just that he just was like, it was too much for him. Like, he didn't really want to really engage any further with it. So then he looked back down into the in the hospital room and just started observing everything. And then he was just describing, like, he felt this peace, he felt a presence and all of this stuff. And I was really like sitting with that and just like really trying to translate that. And this happens a lot when I watch these. And I was like, because there's people who people have varying degrees of interest in God, in the light. And that's undeniable, because this is someone who was dead. This is not someone going down the street and you go, hey, you want to hear about Jesus? And they go, no, thanks. This is someone who is dead, who has he's not going to lie. He's not lying. This is who he is. He's never felt more alive. He doesn't even know what's going on to know what to say yes or no to. So he sees the light, and his genuine reaction is like, I'm going to just look back down at this hospital or whatever. So that to me is like, okay, that is your genuine, honest level of interest in the things of God. But God doesn't love you any less. He still felt the peace. He felt all of the accompanying feelings that come with this. And he's not afraid of death. He came back. He has a completely different perspective on everything and what he chooses to do. He even came back with some Bible stuff, because he was talking about, like, what you focus on. And he was like, he was like, if you have a thought, you might think that you didn't say it, so it doesn't matter, but you had the thought. It's like, bro, that you just said what Jesus said. This is the Bible that you guys are coming back with. But I guarantee you, he would also consider his experience not religious. It's the most, I won't say it's like crazy and insane, but it's just funny that people are missing it, because there's so much stuff on our eyes. And so the way that what I got from that was like, okay, so his genuine interest in that light and what all that entailed was genuinely somewhere in the middle. But God, the light, still loved him regardless, and still gave him, it wasn't, he didn't just go to the void because he didn't go to the light. It was like really making me think about this whole thing. And I had another video about this when I was watching a lot of indies at the time, because it's like, what if? And it's not like God, it's like God is probably saying it, just like he's telling us, just like these people think that what the experiences they're having aren't religious, aren't biblical, and they are. Just like we think that the things in the Bible are Jewish or Christian, and it's really just about people. Because it's just all the people that wrote things down that were significant that happened to them, and they had it passed down because it was a big deal, and that's literally all that it really comes down to. Maybe the people there's the people of God are going to be with God. That is their reward, because that's what they love. That's what they want. They're going to be rewarded with the presence of God. And the people that are on the fence are not going to be rewarded with the presence of God, because they don't necessarily want that. To us, that sounds like a terrible, it sounds very, very bad. They might be fine where they're at. And then you've got just the people that directly oppose God, the direct enemies of God. And they're going to be not happy. So I'm just thinking, like, is there purgatory? Is there this? Is there that? I don't know. Purgatory is just like a sad, dumb name to me. But I'm saying, like, it makes sense that there is a gradation of some kind, and that, it's like there's the city of Jerusalem that's going to come down from heaven, and then there's going to be people outside the city. And we're always, the Christians are so confused when they're reading the Bible. And it's the kind of confusion that's like, I'll know when I get there. Doesn't really, whatever. But if you get up there and you're surprised, don't be too surprised, because it's like there's all of these passages of scripture that you just never was able to digest. And just the whole idea of being called. It's like, well, who's the called? And why are we, if there's people who are called and chosen by God, then what are we going out into the world and preaching the gospel? Like, are we getting those people, or are they already called? And if we don't do it, like, and all of these things, and is it really just believe? If you don't believe, then you're not going to make it. And all the people who believe, it's like, I think that there's a lot going on, and he's telling us what we need to do, but the full picture isn't made yet. And I think we just get ahead of ourselves because we're trying to make the full picture now, which is just an impossible thing to do. Another really, like, crazy, mind-blowing thing that I heard, it wasn't really mind-blowing, but it was just like, okay. Like, I heard this thing, and it was an interview with a guy, and she asked him, like, because God, apparently God had told him, what the rebellion in heaven was about. Like why did Satan do what he did? And there's a lot of, I don't know, controversy. There's a lot of back and forth about it. And he basically said that it was about us. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably because we always think of, like, I always categorize it as like something that happened long ago before anything was, and then God in an unrelated event way after that happened. I don't know why it had to be way after, right after, I don't know. After that happened, he decided to make man. But in my mind, they stayed two unrelated things. I wonder, subconsciously, like, it just would be too heavy for me to like think about that. But when he said it, I was like, it's probably all the same story. Yeah. Like, I'm thinking like that Satan had this unrelated rebellion that he just thought he was the bee's knees and just started doing a bunch of stuff, and it caused an upheaval, and then we were made after that. But if it turns out that God is like, let us make man in our own image, and the angels are like, some of them are like, what? Or one of them is like, what? Are we chopped liver? And then he goes to the other ones, and he's like, what is this? Like, and just starts a whole like thing. Like, that's heavy, dude. But I think that is what it is. Like, aside from the fact that I believe anybody who says that God told them something, like, while they're in their room. I don't know why most people, that's the last thing they're going to believe is what somebody says God told them. That's the first thing I believe. Anybody that just like stayed and just studied and studied and studied and came up with something, I'll consider it. It sounds good. But if it butts up against what I've been sitting and studying also for my years as well, then it's going to have less, I'm already less interested, because it's like, yeah, I can study too. But, first off, when somebody says like they were doing laundry and God told them something, I'm on board. Like, cause that sounds like him to do that. When some big old preachers was like, come on Sunday, I got a big announcement that God told me, I'm less inclined. So, yeah. But I was just thinking that, and I just think like this whole system, it already says that the eye has not seen, nor has ear heard, nor has it entered into the minds of man the things that God has waiting for us, which is just what it is. Like, I definitely believe that, but I also believe that we're going to have a moment where we realize, like, everyone was a little bit right, everyone was half right. These people that are having the non-religious NDEs, they're coming back. The conclusion that they're drawing is, oh, I got all of this. I was an atheist. I did all this, and I didn't go to church. I didn't do this. So there must be no need for the religion, because they came back and they're still not religious. So they haven't, and they don't seem to really care to know that God any further than what they met. So they come back, maybe they do good for people or whatever. Hey, maybe you came back psychic. Good for you. Like I said in another video, we're all going to be psychic. It's going to be like a Tuesday. So that's just how everyone rolls around there anyways. So maybe you came back a little clairvoyant. What'd you do? But did you talk to the God anymore? Or are you just doing cool stuff with your clairvoyance and giving people healing crystals because you haven't opened the Bible and you don't have the Holy Spirit, so you're not getting convicted about where you're going. So you're just you're sort of like, bait out here, because you got something, but you came back and said, "Oh, I don't need any more because I didn't do anything to begin with to get that." And you're blown away by what you got. It's like, oh, you went to heaven and God was nice to you. Like that's not. You don't come back down here and blow up all the religions because that happened. It's like, yeah, he's going to be nice to you. He loves you. We've been saying that. Yeah, he treated you like a whatever, treated you better than you've ever been treated in your life. Yeah, he's God. He's going to do that. I didn't have to do a single thing. Yeah, we've also been saying that. Maybe we didn't know what we were saying, but it clicked when you said what you said because you had an experience, and I haven't had that experience yet. It's like people are just really, they're not, to me, it helps a lot if you just lead with love on this. It's like if you love God, you're going to be able to navigate your way through this. Um, but if you're just filled up with all this other stuff and you're just trying to escape punishment, you just don't, hell is bad. You don't want to think about that. That's kind of, but it's like, you don't know what you're really trying to avoid is the separation from God. That's what you're really trying to avoid. Like, but you don't know that because you don't even know about the God that made you. And you can't tell because God is here. And you think that you don't feel him and you think that you don't engage with him, but he's everywhere. As soon as he's not around, you're going to know. Oh, that was God everywhere that I was feeling all the time. So I cannot believe that I talked for a freaking hour, but I didn't mean to talk for 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes anyways, but yeah, that's my Sunday sermon. Pass the offering plate, guys, and I will see you later.